Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Nest and Inside the Iggles live show. Thank you guys very much for joining us today on this Monday, October, what day? 2nd. That's just a 1-2. It's October 2nd, baby. Thank you guys for joining us. We are here to talk to you today about your 4-0 Philadelphia Eagles coming off of a divisional game, a butthole clencher. The 34-31 overtime win against the Wahington Commanders, buddy. That was something. I don't know if you're like me, you're still a little bit clenched up. Make sure you go out, buy your Valium, buy your laxatives, because it's time to loosen up. Try to get everything set straight, because that was a lot. That was a lot to go through. The game, it was not at all what we kind of, I don't know about expected, but certainly what we had hoped for. With this was going to be a game where Eagles are 9-point favorites. Maybe they should have been, felt like maybe they should have been like 14-point favorites or something. We thought they were going to go in there and just wipe the floor. The sack party was going to begin. That is not what happened. For the most part, Nicholas Morrow, he threw a party by himself, man. That guy, where the hell did that come from? Didn't expect that. Game started off, the Commanders went down the field, and it was a 7-minute, 14-play drive, and like, God damn it. Are they going to do this again? They're going to do this again. We're going to have this same game just like last year where they just win the game by owning the clock. They score a touchdown. Eagles answer right back, though, with a touchdown on their own on a 6.5-minute drive. DeAndre Swift walks right in. Nobody touched him. It was great. Unfortunately, then the Commanders, they did score again. But it's kind of a quiet first half. The Eagles ended up going into halftime 7-point deficit. Very unhappy about everything. I was very unhappy about everything. At halftime, I took some time to myself, went out in the front yard, threw beer cans at cars that drove by. It was cathartic. But then I had the realization. I was like, holy, wow, okay. What have we learned over 3 weeks is that this Eagles team is a second-half team. They're not going to be the same second-quarter team that they were last year, where they're putting all the points on the board in the second quarter, demoralizing the other team going into halftime. No, this is a second-half team. This Eagles team closes strong, because that's what happened. They came out of halftime, go down a little bit. Jake Elliott kicks another field goal. The deficit's cut to 17-13. But then all the work has been paying off. We knew it going into the game. Emmanuel Forbes is a little 165-pound bitch, and he's been chirping A.J. Brown the entire game. He's been chirping him. What's that? A.J. Brown, double move. A.J. Brown, beautiful, scooting down the field, across the field, 59-yard touchdown. Olamide Zaccheaus somehow makes it down there and blocks for him. Where the hell that come from, OZ? That was phenomenal. A few more drives go on. The Commanders tie it up. It's 24-24. Minute and 46 seconds left. And then A.J. Brown streaking down the field again, just absolutely sunning Emmanuel Forbes, the 165-pound, like I said before, bitch rookie, and then sets the football down in his lap, gets the the taunting penalty. There's a minute and 43 seconds left, and too much time. You leave too much time on the clock for Sam Howell? Turns out the answer is yes, because the Commanders go downfield, tie the game up. For some reason, Ron Rivera doesn't go for two. Doesn't matter. He's an idiot. Riverboat Ron, you're stupid. You're a dummy, and get over it, idiot. You should have done that. The Commanders win the coin toss in overtime, and then the unlikeliest of heroes emerges. No, not a man, but a body part. Reed Blankenship's forearm. Mwah. You are the savior. You're the savior of the game. Good God, give that arm a medal. Cut it off and put it in the loo. God, that is Canton. That arm. Oh my God, saved the day. Forces the Commanders to punt. Eagles go down the field with a weirdo intentional grounding call. Doesn't matter. DeAndre Swift's on this team. He runs, gets it back into field goal position. Jake Elliott hits the 54-yarder. Eagles win 34-31. Guys, what a game. What a game. If you like football, you like that game. If you like an easy Eagles win, you did not. You did not like that. You did not like that one bit. But we're going to talk about that. I covered the whole thing, but we're going to talk about it in more detail. I'm going to bring on my my co-hosts right now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Brandon Pockris and Travis Williams. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. It's Victory Monday. Got some Phillies playoff baseball going on this week. Got to beat a divisional opponent and Ron Rivera, who is the biggest snake oil salesman in the NFL. So I got no complaints.
That guy. What about you, Brandon?
I'm doing pretty good. Very fun day of football. Very close Eagles game, and we'll get into that because the NFC's games, they're always nuts. We know that. We've seen plenty of them where it seems like one team should blow out the other. It never happens. But I think even in the midst of that, there's a lot to talk about regarding, what's working on offense, what isn't working, what's working on defense, what isn't working. And the luxury, and I'll keep coming back to this until it isn't the point, the luxury that the Eagles have that not really any team in the NFL has anymore is that we can talk about all these issues, but guess what? They're still undefeated.
Still undefeated, baby. Good God. It was, I don't know. Let's just start off with this. What are your guys' general vibes coming out of that game?
So for me, honestly, I mean, Jalen Hurts had the most completions he's had all season, the most yards he's had all season, the most touchdowns he's had all season, and didn't throw a pick. So I think Hurts looked the most in sync with the rest of the offense that he's looked all season. And from a defensive perspective, yes, they let up a lot of points. Yes, Sam Howell marched down the field to tie it up and send the game to overtime. But if you look at positions where you didn't think the Eagles were going to be too good at going into this season, if you look at linebacker, you look at safety, to see guys like Reed Blankenship step up, see Nicholas Moreau step up, which I saw something today that Moreau was the first Eagle to have 10 tackles and 3 sacks since sacks became a recorded stat.
Really?
So, yeah. So I saw that on Twitter. I'm going to assume it's true, but
that's good. Good.
I think if you're looking at, yes, it is. But I think if you're looking at, guys who are on value contracts or in maybe a position that they wouldn't be in on a team with more talented, skilled players at that position is the nicest way to say it. But I think for what it's worth, we're getting very good play out of positions we didn't think we were going to get. And then Jalen Carter too. He had another great week, and he's doing phenomenal. I think got some nice, good young players playing well. Can't complain.
I mean, yeah, it was kind of a quiet game by that defensive line. No sacks or anything from them. I guess aside from Hassan Reddick getting his revenge against Andrew Wiley. But what's kind of cool to me, I mean, that defensive line opened up those sacks for Nicholas Morrow. I mean, for I think 2 of them they did. One of them he just made a good play, and Antonio Gibson ran right by him and didn't block him. But Nicholas Morrow playing out of his mind. But what's good for me is that's kind of how Nakobe Dean plays his best. Is when the people in front of him, specifically Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, those exact people can take up so much bandwidth from that offensive line that he can just go in there and wreak havoc. Like, yeah, this linebacker core, it's not doing very well with like in coverage or anything like that, but they're physical and moving in the backfield. It's good. I realized that I kind of interrupted my own question, but Brandon, what are your vibes?
So I think the good thing, and a few good things, is, DeAndre Swift still getting the majority of the touches.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the attempts, 14 rushing attempts to Kenny Gainwell's 4. He had 4 targets and 4 receptions in the passing game for 23 yards. They're realizing that Swift is their best running back, and they're playing him as such. I know after week 1, that was a concern I had where I'm like, okay, why isn't he getting any touches, let alone the majority of them? And, the more he's playing, the more he's opening up for the offense, as we all thought he would. Obviously, maybe you want to see a Rashad Penny involved a little bit more, but that's just nitpicking at that point.
Right.
Why complain about a guy that's averaging 4 yards per carry yesterday and doing damage in the passing game too? AJ Brown, top 5 receiver in football, I'd probably say, probably higher.
Emmanuel Forbes certainly made him look that way.
Yeah, and that's such a mismatch. Like, you look at Forbes' size, you look at AJ Brown's size. it's just not close. Devonta Smith, that in technicality, that would have been a better matchup for Forbes. Not sure why they put him on A.J. Brown. That's a discussion for another day. Jalen Hurts, you love to see over 300 yards, multiple touchdowns, no interceptions, only took 3 sacks. Like, the offense is starting to click. Yeah. And I'd say this is kind of the inverse of the Tampa Bay game, which we were kind of right about, where the offense was productive and the offense was able to move the ball, but it was kind of on the defense. And there were a lot of ticky-tack penalties, which helped the Commanders. But,
oh, God,
you let up points to Sam Howell. And honestly, this might be a hot take. I don't think that's necessarily like the end of the world. I think Sam Howell's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
The Commanders have Terry McLaurin. They have Jahan Dotson. Looking at the running game, Brian Robinson's a very good running back. Diami Brown is a pretty good receiver that I think can develop. It's not like you're playing the Arizona Cardinals, who ironically are still playing pretty well, or a Joe Burrow team where he can't move, or an offense that's just stagnant. I think the Commanders are better than a lot of people give them credit for. So the Eagles having a shootout type game with them, look, we love Darius Slay and James Bradbury as players. What did we say heading into the year? They're older. That for corners, that fall off or that regression in play can happen at any moment. And I'm not even necessarily saying that there's a huge fall off, but even one slower step or half a slower step against the likes of a guy like Terry McLaurin, that can make all the difference. And then you have to rely on the backups like Job and Eli Ricks. And are they ready right off the bat? Maybe not, but you hope they develop into that.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the things I was afraid of going into this. Is that it always seems like Terry McLaurin eats Darius Slay's lunch. Man, it seems like Slay packs it up for him and just gets it right eaten. Like, it's tough. And that was one thing going into the game. I don't know if you guys listened to Darius Slay's. I don't know if you want to call it a podcast or a show on YouTube. He's got a YouTube channel. And he was kind of like previewing this game, and he was talking about McLaurin. And he said the hardest thing about Terry McLaurin is that he just gives it literally 100% every single snap. And, I would think that would be a good reason why he would pay off dividends near the end of a game. But in that first drive, Terry McLaurin was just, buddy, he was wide open. It's what we've had some comments here complaining about the soft coverage. And that's kind of the story of this game, man. They were able to get us some chunk yards with that. And I don't know. And this is kind of going back on something different, but you're talking about Sam Howell. Is Sam Howell the best quarterback that the Eagles have played this year? It's not.
Kirk.
No.
They played Kirk. I think he's probably 2, right? Who did the Eagles play week 1?
Mac.
Yeah, no, he's 2. I think he's better than Mac. I think he's better than Baker. Yeah, so it's probably 2.
But it just goes to like what you're saying with the well, yeah, Travis, what do you think first?
I personally am a big Sam Howell fan. I think coming out of college at UNC, I think he might have not had like the athleticism like a Malik Willis or had like the highlight reel of a Kenny Pickett, but I think he was very, very accurate with all of his throws in college, and I think he's not really like a go scramble and run for 20 yards guy, but he is a move around in the pocket and buy himself time type of quarterback. And I think he is very, very much like Kirk Cousins, but I think he has a higher ceiling than Kirk Cousins, and I think we saw some of that today or yesterday. And I think I got to agree with Brandon. Today he's not better than Kirk Cousins, but he definitely did play the best against the Eagles defense so far out of the 4 quarterbacks we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned he's not a guy who scrambles for 20, but that's exactly what he did, man. I think that might have been in the third quarter or whatever it was, but yeah, he just took off right down the middle. But see, the thing that trips me up, because I think that he might be the best quarterback, because like you're saying, like a Joe Burrow who's injured, can't move around a lot. That's just who Kirk is. Kirk Cousins is just an injured Joe Burrow.
That's not a bad comparison.
I think I might have just nailed that. But like Kirk, he got that strip sack from Josh Sweat in that game, or Josh Sweat got the strip sack from Kirk in that game. Sam Howell didn't. I mean, he never really had the ball in danger like that. I guess Brandon Graham had that their second scoring drive where stupid idiot Terrell Edmonds can't catch a ball, smokes him in the face, in the hands, bounces up in the. That was infuriating.
That should have been a pick.
What
really should have been an interception.
What do you got? What do you got? No hands? You just got nubs? You got no hand. They just took your hands off and it's just nubs there now. What are you doing, Terrell? He had a bad game. And I don't really want to listen to anybody's evidence counter to that.
So, I mean, switching gears obviously from Eagles defense, I saw a comment. I'm not sure who it was from, but Steve Walters saying stop having scheduled runs for Hurts. I'm gonna agree with that. Every time it seemed like there's a designed run for Jalen Hurts, it's going for not just no yards, loss of yardage. It's setting them back. I don't know what it is. It just seems like these quarterback sweeps are just so slow developing that by the time Hurts is like pulling the ball on that read where it's not a read, it's just a fake.
Yeah.
There's 3 defensive linemen in his face. And Hurts is a great runner. He's not going to outrun people. It's going to be, more upfield and like getting 4 or 5 yards and keeping drives moving. And if he breaks one, it's because he has the open field. But if you have the defensive lineman there, he's not going to outrun, a lot of edge rushers and, make positive yards. And plus, you're just putting your quarterback at risk at that point for no reason, where he's already behind the line of scrimmage. He tries to make something happen, and only bad stuff happens from there.
And you mentioned that, so I'm very curious now. When we're talking about those design runs, are we talking about RPOs? Are we talking about or PR? Or are you just talking about specific runs for Jalen?
So I think the comment was referring to specific runs. RPO is a completely different
schedule
story.
Runs for Hurts.
Yeah, RPO is a different story because that's based on a specific read. Like, is the linebacker moving this way as opposed to that way? Is the edge, like that stuff? But, and that's not counting a read option because then that's based on an edge read key where if he crashes, you're pulling and taking it that way. And if he doesn't crash, you're giving. I'm talking like I think that's referring to like a quarterback sweep type thing.
Yeah, I gotcha. Because I was just, and I do agree with that. I do agree with that we need to cut that out quick, fast, and in a hurry. But I was just thinking about the RPO. So one thing that's plagued the Eagles, because they've been very good with their RPOs the last 2 years. They've been very good with those. And maybe it's that teams are playing those better now. But another thing, as the Eagles were really good with those, they kept getting the illegal man downfield penalty. And on RPOs that we've been running this year, they have not been getting the illegal man downfield penalty. And I don't know if that's a correlation or causation kind of a thing, but it would seem like they might be related. Is that dumb Jake brain? Or
no, so like what they do a lot of times is if it takes too long for the throw to get out, like if Hurts scrambles and then throws, like the half of the offensive line that's pass blocking is going to stay back, but the side that's run blocking is going to go up and try and make that lane. So it kind of becomes tough because if you're trying to run a lot of RPOs and you try to throw it a lot, and have those delayed throws on an RPO, or maybe Hurts scrambles and the offensive line gets lost a little, it can create those penalties. And if you try to have the side of the offensive line that's run blocking just stay back, they're not really going to create that lane. That's just they're just going to sit back and wait for a D line to come hit them. And then there goes your rushing lanes because they weren't able to get out in the trenches and make them.
Okay. I guess that makes sense then. But going back to the Jalen Hurts running thing, one thing that Nick Sirianni did say today, somebody asked him about whether or not, like, why Jalen's not blasting through guys. Because we saw that yesterday. Was that Emmanuel Forbes or was it Kendall Fuller? I can't remember which one it was. But Jalen goes to run out and then he sees the guy not able to juke him and he just goes down. And you're like, man, I think that Jalen Hurts would have been able to put that guy into the crust of the earth if he wanted to. But I guess what they're coaching him to do now is to just go down. They're trusting Jalen to know whether or not he is going to make somebody miss. And if he's not going to be able to, because we also saw that on that huge Jalen Hurts run where he juked out, I don't know, 7 guys and then cuts back to the middle and gets however big that run was. It was clutch. It's like, there's my Jalen. That's my Jalen. There you good. High five, slap hands all around. Good for this. But then you see him go down. You're like, damn it, man. I wish we saw more of 2022. Put people into the dirt kind of Jalen. But I guess what like I said, they're happy with Jalen going down like that. And that might have something to do with the fact that these outside quarterback specific runs are not paying off the way that we had hoped.
And I think a point to that is also like there's further trust in Hurts as the passer.
Right.
Because when you don't have as much trust in Hurts as a passer, a la last season, before the season really got rolling, that's why you're running Hurts more. That's why you're, letting him run through players, because that's a big part of your offense. That's a big part of what you're doing. Where now you see that Hurts is continuing his progression as a player, as a passer. And also you just signed into an extension. You don't want your superstar extended quarterback to take a shot while he's trying to make someone miss in the open field. All of a sudden, a team of Super Bowl aspirations is starting Marcus Mariota or Tanner McKee at quarterback. Like it's about protecting the investment. Ironically, we see that with Josh Allen, where they're trying to get the running back, and I feel like this is the first year it's finally working. And they don't want Allen running like an absolute maniac anymore. And it hasn't worked in the past, but now you're seeing the benefit of that for the Bills, where you have a guy like James Cook. You have the different weapons, and Allen still has the ability to pick apart teams in the pocket without running like a chicken with his head cut off and the Bills' superstar quarterback getting hurt and their season getting derailed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess when you can pretty much kind of narrow it all down to our quarterback is worth $500,000. It's probably a good follow, a good follow the money kind of a thought right there. Yeah, that's a good point. Did you what else stood out to you guys on offense? We want to talk about receivers. Devontae Smith. Absolutely. Just I don't know how he just turns into Cirque du Soleil when he plays the Commanders, man. The guy, unreal catch. That unreal. Was that before halftime? Yeah, that was before halftime. That unreal.
I mean, he's just that good. Like, and it's why we talk about the duo of Smith and Brown. Brown is just going to run through people and just get open however he can, whereas like Smith is this technician that he can do a little bit of everything: contested catch, route running, speed. He just does it all. And you add whatever that third element is, whether it's
Inspector Gadget,
Zacchaeus, Goddard, or Swift, whoever it is, depending on game script, and you have a bunch of weapons that you can attack whatever type of team you want with.
It is so good. It's so good. And then, like I said before, AJ Brown, he had Emmanuel Forbes chirping in his ear. Which whenever the Commanders drafted Emmanuel Forbes, I understand. In college, he was a big interception guy. He was a ball hawk. Yeah. So is Trayvon Diggs. They suck otherwise. So
let's be real. It should have been Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, for sure.
And if Christian Gonzalez is playing for the Commanders, that game maybe goes a little bit differently, because I don't think Gonzalez gets completely torched the way Forbes did.
Yeah, we saw Christian Gonzalez playing AJ Brown and Devontae Smith well. Like we saw that this month or last month. Like it was not a long time ago.
No.
But God,
it was just so interesting how with leading up to the game, Forbes and Devontae were both talking about how they played each other in college when Alabama played Mississippi State when Forbes was a freshman, and they were talking about that, and both of them seemed like they were looking forward to matching up, and then Forbes just wasn't covering him. And I feel like Forbes has a skill set that and a size that would make him the perfect, not the perfect, but the guy that you would want matched up with Devontae Smith more. You know, they're both undersized for their position, but they both just have a knack of a way of getting into football. And Devontae Smith, he's got like a sixth sense to always know where the football is. And I think finesse is the word that I would use to describe it. There's not too many receivers who play with that finesse and have that ability. Like the ball, it wasn't even like he went up and out muscled a guy and got it. Like the ball was just out in front of him, and it was still in the air all the way to the ground. But he was just like, I don't care if I'm using my elbows, my wrists, my hands. This ball is sticking to my chest and it's not touching the ground. And that's how he came away with the catch. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that they wouldn't want Forbes on that matchup with Smith. Just for even just size wise.
It's not even why they would want him not matched. Or like you don't want him matched up against AJ Brown.
You know,
like, that guy is 250 pounds of muscle and push him out of the way with one hand and grab the football with the other without his feet being on the ground.
60 pounds heavier than him.
I will say that's probably more on defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio.
Oh yeah, hey, it was just a dust up.
All I have to say is he's not exactly well known for his decision making, whether on the field or with comments. But that's a story for a different day.
It was what a goddamn lunatic, that guy. It was just a dust up. Don't worry about it. What are you talking about, Jack? Someone died.
The Commanders have such an interesting coaching staff.
And they never let him go. They're like, oh, yeah.
Now, if we want to go over to defense at this point, if we want to transition there, Eric Bieniemy kind of, again, talking about eating lunches, Eric Bieniemy kind of ate Sean Desai's lunch. That there was a lot of plays that had Eric Bieniemy's fingerprints on them. Their version of their 4th and 1 play where they had Logan Thomas come in and take the snap directly. That's like, I saw that, I was like, oh, he's going in motion. That's a tight end in motion. This is an Eric Bieniemy play. Like that I looked at my wife. I said, he drew that up for Travis Kelce, is what he did. And he's just able to use it now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what's funny about that is, look, there's a lot of different things with the Kansas City Chiefs. And everyone talks about how much impact Bieniemy did have versus how much he didn't have. You know, if we were to objectively look at it, and this obviously pertains to the Eagles because Washington is a division rival of Philadelphia. How much impact would we say Bieniemy is having on this Commanders team? I'd personally say a lot. And how much do we think Kansas City is actually feeling his loss on the offensive side of things?
Oh yeah. And this is a complete kind of sidebar, but I do have a take. I don't know where the Jake's take thing is. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh yeah, here it is. Jake's take. Oh, it's a handsome young man right there. Jake's take. Here's Jake's take for you. Brian Daboll is Matt Nagy. Brian Daboll wins Coach of the Year and then just lays a turd. Matt Nagy wins Coach of the Year and then just lays a turd. Brian Daboll is going to be a much better offensive coordinator than a head coach. Just like Matt Nagy, much better of an offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Well, definitely not Eric Bieniemy. But that's I had that thought. I had that thought this week, and I was like, "Oh, that's a smart thought, Jacob. Good for you." But yeah, I don't know. The Chiefs are definitely any team that goes from an elite play designer like Eric Bieniemy is going to be much better.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a move that's way more impactful for Washington than it is the Chiefs, because the Chiefs, they'll have Andy Reid, Mahomes, Kelce, like. Maybe it's a bump in the road, but they'll figure it out sooner or later. They'll get it all figured out. They'll get a new play caller, get new guys to draw up plays. Even if who did Matt Nagy's their play caller?
Yeah.
So right, yeah. So even if he doesn't work out, which it's very hard to not draw up plays that work when you have Patrick Mahomes, who's going to make them work no matter what. As much as we do not like him, but Washington, I mean, that's a move that's so far when you bring in a new quarterback and Sam Howell, who starting for the first time this year, and you have a guy like Bieniemy who can break it down and say, this is our game plan. We're going to run these players in motion. You got to recognize these zones and know that if they're laying off, you can just hit the guys short, hit them when they're in a gap in the zone, and just pick them apart and move the ball downfield. And it was really almost like a really old style Patriots and Tom Brady sort of offense, where if you just sit in soft zone coverage, no matter how good your defensive line and linebackers are playing, we'll just find the soft spot in the zone and just keep picking it apart, and not make the mistake. But unfortunately, they just were up against a more high-powered offense.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that's part of the thing that's going into this, is that now obviously Sean Desai's defense is different than Jonathan Gannon's was last year, but I mean, 5 games ago, the Eric Bieniemy played against the Eagles defense, and this game was not totally different than the Super Bowl, at least defensively. Eagles played a lot of soft, and they chewed him up. They tried to make Sam Howell make a mistake throwing deep, and he just stayed patient. Like you said, just stayed patient and chipped away whenever they were giving him soft spots in coverage. It was not as much fun to watch this team on defense as it normally is.
I gotta say, a lot of these teams with some of the strongest pass rush, whether it be the Eagles, whether it be a team like the Jets, whether it be I think a Pittsburgh as well, it's very interesting to see, when they try to run these soft zones and just try to take advantage of their pass rush. And I feel like time and time again, until those defenses understand and make that adjustment, they get picked apart because the opposing offense is like, why would we have our guys sit back and wait when this pass rush is coming, instead of just chipping away when if we consistently get yards from that, that's going to open up the later throws down the field, because the defensive coordinator is going to be like, we're giving up too much yards. We have to switch something up. You go to a 0 high look or maybe a 1 high look, where like we talked about previously, you have a guy like McLaurin, a guy like Jahan Dotson, Diami Brown, that could potentially win on one-on-one, and that's how those things cascade.
Yeah. I think
go ahead.
It's hard to blame the Eagles for coming out with the game plan that they did, because last week, Buffalo did just absolutely tear. They ate Sam Howell up. So really, to say that maybe we'll try and get him off his footing early with a fast pass rush and just let him pick apart the zone coverage if it's there. I don't really have a problem with them coming out the way that they did, but I think when you see that it's clearly not working, and it's clearly Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera, they were all in the film room and cleaned up the mistakes on their end and decided that they were just going to play a cleaner game, because you can't win a football game on just one play offensively.
Yeah, and that was Sam Howell's best game.
Oh yeah, easily.
Maybe you could say his win against Dallas last year when he came in week 18, but who the hell knows if that actually mattered. I mean, I know Dallas played their starters for at least the most part of that game, but the Commanders ended. But this was his best game. I mean, he was making some good throws, man. I anticipated him coming in there and just kind of crapping himself whenever Jalen Carter would get in his face, but no, he did good. I mean, they played the best version of Sam Howell, and it almost worked for him.
Yeah, and you also hit on that the defense looked a lot similar to the way it did in the Super Bowl with Jonathan Gannon. But I think there's 2 ways that I look at how the defense played and was coached. Was that the secondary, they did come out in a lot of soft zones that fell very flat, and Terrell Edmonds did not have a good game, and it was tough with the Commanders constantly trying to pick on the backup, whether that be Joe or whoever else was in there.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, the front 7, they played a phenomenal game, and it wasn't like just a Jonathan Gannon just have 4 guys stand on the D line and have them rush. It was there were blitzes, and there was times where it's okay. We have these great defensive linemen who are going to draw double teams, who with 4 guys they can eat up 5 offensive linemen very easily. So we're going to send in these linebackers, and we're going to blitz, and we're not just going to have the linebackers that aren't very good in soft zone coverages get picked apart. To their credit, Moreau, if he was sitting back and they came out in a lot more just rushing 4 plays where they're just rushing 4, he doesn't get 3 sacks. But to know that, hey, Moreau's maybe not the best coverage guy, he's a little older, but if the gaps are there on the O-line, D-line, he can still run through them and sack the quarterback. That's something that Jonathan Gannon really never did.
Never would.
And I think Sean Desai, while maybe the soft zone coverages on the back end weren't really good play calling, he did a really good job of knowing when to dial up the blitz, when to send an extra guy, knowing when to get a linebacker in the quarterback's face. And that could have been the difference in this game.
Oh, I think it certainly was. I mean, he was, man, that was incredible. He had that best game of Nick Morrow's life. You mentioned that they're picking on Josh Jobe. One thing that was weird to me, and I don't know what the hell happened here, but when Darius Slay goes out for like 2 plays or something like that, it might have just been like for the end of that drive. But like instead of trying to pick on the secondary, they go out and run the ball out of like a heavy formation. It's like, what the? That's dumb.
I think they threw at Bradbury too right after that.
Yeah, they threw at
it's like, let's throw at the backup or a Darius Slay who's maybe beat up a little bit. It's like, no, we're going to throw right at their best, healthiest quarterback now.
You understand he's also all pro, right? Like it's a cool thing about having 2 amazing cornerbacks is that if one goes down, you have an amazing cornerback on the field. That was very dumb. But Quentin said this: every quarterback we played this year has had success against our secondary except Baker. And I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. Obviously, what's his dick? Kirk did, but he's also throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. And that was when was that a game? No, that week 3 was Baker when the secondary was all kinds of banged up. But that I know Kirk did. I don't necessarily know if I would say Mac Jones did. I know that he had a lot of success throwing to his tight ends and stuff, but I don't necessarily know if I'd say. Obviously, it has to do partly with the safeties, but he was kind of just picking on the middle of the field rather than the entire defensive secondary. I just wanted to say that.
I think both Mac and Kirk, they did have good numbers when you look at the stat sheet, but when you watch the game, when did they play well? When it was the second half and they were down 2 scores,
right?
It was more or less garbage. It was definitely garbage time for Mac Jones, I would say. And Kirk Cousins, it was garbage time in disguise, just to make it. The Vikings love their 1-score games. They'll do anything to just say, oh, yeah, it was within 1 score. But when you watch the game, Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins are going to have success when they're trailing by 14 or 21.
Right. And it's not like they were doing bad coverage on Justin Jefferson. The guy's just got hands like magnets. He's just really good. You can't do anything about that. Let's see. Like I said before, Hassan Reddick got revenge against Andrew Wiley. That was good to see. That was the only sack that the D-line got. If you want to consider him D-line, I probably would. Like I said, relatively quiet game from Jalen Carter and the gang. I did notice, I mentioned this on Friday. Did we think Contavious Street and Marvin Tuipulotu were going to get a sack? They certainly had their opportunities. They were rotating that D-line big time. But looking at the rushing numbers, the Commanders had just over 100 rushing yards, 107. They only ran the ball 28 times. What it looked like, and I don't even say what it looked like. That's the best a team has done rushing against this Eagles team so far, which was kind of surprising to me. Did that stand out to you guys? Am I the only one thinking that? Because I sat Brian Robinson in fantasy this week, and I kept keeping an eye on that, or what did that look like to you guys?
I mean, yeah, the best rushing week. He only ran for 56 yards. He also had a touchdown, but
he had 2 touchdowns. He had 2.
He had 2?
One of them was the one that he fumbled on the goal line.
True. Yes.
Terry McLaurin got it.
Yeah, so he had I was looking at Swift's stat line for whatever reason. He had 45 yards on 14 attempts, 3.2 yards per carry. So it's crazy. Yeah, it's the best that a back's done against the Eagles. Still not great.
Yeah.
It's still, ironically, and I don't know if it's even intentional, it's seeming like the Eagles are just this pass funnel defense, yet quarterbacks are having a good amount of success against their secondary. So it's very interesting. But at the same time, a lot of that success is coming after the Eagles have built a lead. So that type of defense is working, like technically. So it's very weird because the stats don't always paint the best story. Because
Right.
it's like, yeah, Kirk Cousins had this phenomenal game throwing football. The Vikings were behind the entire time. Mac Jones did X, Y, and Z. Sam Howell did X, Y, and Z. But for the most part, outside of really this game, Eagles have had double-digit leads consistently.
I was going to say that's kind of the startling thing about the passing defense in this game is that it wasn't with a lead. Like the Eagles didn't have the lead, and they just were able to. It seemed like they kept pouring it on over and over again until those whether it be penalties or sacks came into play. Like that was kind of the sobering thing, at least for me, with this one. I don't know if you guys feel it. How do you bark like that? How do you bark like that?
I just think that. Well, he goes takes care of that. I just think that it was what great running backs have the Eagles playing. Patriots, Ezekiel Elliott, and Ramondre Stevenson. Those are guys who are more of goal line specialists, is a better way to put it. I mean, he's got some speed to him, but they're both power backs, and then Alexander Madison, he's not the greatest. They don't bring in Cam Akers, and they don't have an entire fan base wishing they still had Dalvin Cook if he is. Right. And then the Buccaneers with Rachaad White, he's still kind of coming into his own, and I just feel like it was really just a week where you're bound to have one of these running backs who's middle of the pack, nothing special, not a Pro Bowler, not going to set the world on fire. One of them sooner or later is going to come in and see something on tape that other teams haven't, and I think we'll definitely see someone run better than Brian Robinson did on the Eagles defense all season. But also that doesn't mean that he didn't really have the greatest game. Like you said, yeah, maybe he did get technically 2 touchdowns, but he also did fumble, and he also didn't win the game for the Commanders.
Yeah, it's not a worry. It's not a worry, but this was the two. They don't have a good offensive line. The Commanders don't have a good offensive line, which helps. But this is like Brian Robinson's probably the most, like you were saying, the most complete back that the Eagles have faced so far. But yeah, the Brian Robinson fumbling and it not being Antonio Gibson was kind of shocking to me. There's a lot of times there where it seemed like Antonio Gibson just wanted to give the ball away.
So looking forward, right, and staying on the running back point, you got the next, I'll say 5 games. You got the Rams, Jets, Dolphins, Commanders again, and Cowboys. So in those matchups, right, the Rams, I wouldn't say Kyren Williams is this amazing running back, but he's been pretty good this year. Breece Hall, by the time we get to the Eagles game, we're not sure what his workload's going to be, but he has the talent of an elite running back, and he's shown in the past that he can be an elite running back.
The Jets are just allergic to using him
right now. Yes, that is very true. You got Miami. That to me, and then Dallas 2 weeks later. Those are the 2 tests right now where I'm like, that's the real proving ground for how is this run defense, and because you're going against a Miami scheme. I wouldn't even say running backs necessarily, but a scheme that consistently creates big opportunities for the running game. And then Dallas has an electrifying running back in Tony Pollard. How the Eagles defend those backs, well, it's the same way we talked about Tampa Bay before they played Philly. They had these great offensive performances before actually facing a great defense in Philly. We saw how that worked out. Then it goes to the point of, with the Eagles' run defense, how does it look against the top of the line rushing attacks in the NFL? I'm very excited for that because Eagles shut those teams down. It's going to be like, all right, if they can work out some of their secondary struggles, it's going to be a very hard defense to score on.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely going into correlation causation. It's definitely a correlation where the better teams on this roster are the ones that actually are not on the roster. The better teams on the schedule are the ones that have these running backs that you actually fear. Like you see a good wide receiver with Minnesota, you're like, yeah, but Minnesota sucks. But it's the ones with the good running backs that you're like, that could be an incredibly hairy situation coming in quick.
Yeah, and I think something that you just got to keep in mind is the Eagles. When it came down to it, yeah, Brian Robinson had a good day, but the offensive line being able to create these opportunities for Swift, being able to buy Hurts time, keeping Hurts cleaner, making sure he sacked less than Howell. That alongside of some other things was what made the difference in this game. Alongside of Moreau and the defense, that's what I was thinking of. Alongside that, what I said before, and looking down the line, how many teams really have an offensive line and a running back room that can hang with the Eagles? Because we'll come down to, is it going to be Pollard? Is it going to be Miami's running back room? But even if they have the running backs, it doesn't always mean that they have the offensive line. And DeAndre Swift is already a guy he's only 253 yards away from having his career high in a single season.
It's amazing.
Well, hey, when your offensive line opens up lanes the size of a freaking interstate lane, that's probably what's going to happen.
It's so fun.
And it's like what we talked about before the show with a guy like Pacheco, who was in college and no one knew who he was, and then he comes into the NFL and you see that he's a guy that can run. How many running backs in the NFL are running behind a bad offensive line that can't really run block well, can't create lanes well, or they have an offensive coordinator or offensive coaching staff that can't really draw up plays for running backs? But then they come to Philadelphia and it takes 3 or 4 weeks to already have it be your career year, no matter what happens at this point, as long as you don't suffer a season-ending injury. If you just go out there and play 5 snaps a game, 10 snaps a game, you're going to have a career season. And I think that's something that also bodes well for the Eagles going forward too, is even though they Kenneth Gainwell is the only running back on the roster that's under contract for after this season.
Right.
But as long as you keep the core of the offensive line intact, if you keep four out of the 5 of those guys, or you have Jurgens who can slide over to center and Steen who can play right guard, and you also have a whole draft and free agency cycle where we're going to be able to fill those holes. It's hard to not see the Eagles as a team that's going to focus on running the ball a lot for the time being. And as long as you can just run the ball when you need to and have Jalen Hurts who can throw the ball, it's hard to see that it's just going to be a running game that's going to be what's going to cause the Eagles to lose a game.
Now, you mentioned the core there. One thing that was notable that happened this game, the biggest notable thing about it, Cam Jurgens out with a foot. They said week to week, which is much worse than day to day, because week to week or day to day means week to week, and week to week probably means see him after the bye week, which is very upsetting. But in comes Sua Opeta, who had a pretty good game, and instead of Sirianni being like, we don't know who the guy's gonna be, it's still up in the air. He straight up and said today, he was like, yeah, it's gonna be Sua Opeta. It's gonna be Sua Opeta. Sua Opeta, welcome back. Your first game that you're starting is against Aaron Donald.
Have fun.
That sucks. That sucks. But what is kind of shocking, like it kind of got ended early in in training camp. One of the training camp battles that we were looking at is it going to be Cam Jurgens? Is it going to be Tyler Steen? Then it ended up not being a battle between those two, and it was absolutely Cam Jurgens. And then turns out the battle wasn't even between first and second place; it was between first and third place, because now Sua Opeta is going to be that starting right guard.
Do we think that says a lot about Steen right now, or? What's the take on that?
So when I heard him say that, a few things went in my brain. Number one, obviously looking into the future, they want Cam Jurgens to be a replacement for Jason Kelce. They thought that might be this year. They thought it might be last year, but turns out he's right guard now. But I think the long term is still him being the center. For Steen, though, it seems like they almost want him to be a tackle. It would seem like, because that's what he did in college. Am I correct with that?
Yeah.
So maybe they're building Steen to be a Lane Johnson replacement. I'm not entirely sure, but it is disheartening to hear that 5 weeks in, you don't trust your third round draft pick to be able to go in for a game.
I just find it very interesting because a lot of the talk about Steen was, the arm length and that he wouldn't necessarily be a great fit at tackle to deal with some of the longer edge rushers. But, if the Eagles want to try that, like I feel I agree with you on that. Like if they drafted Steen that high, Steen should be quote unquote next in line to be on the field.
Yeah, it is odd.
I don't really see it as really a knock on Tyler Steen. I think the Eagles just over the last couple seasons, really under Nick Sirianni, have kind of just developed this culture of we're not going to play rookies. We're going to give them as much time as they need to come into their game. And I mean, look at Jalen Carter on the defensive line. He's got more pressures than Aaron Donald, and he's got the most. Well, I guess Moreau now, but he can still sack the quarterback. He's got the most sacks out of the defensive tackles on the roster, and he isn't playing more than half the snaps even. And I think it's just something that's just something we got to deal with, is that they want to see Steen develop behind closed doors before that they throw him out there. And I think it's also, well, Jake, you could be absolutely right about this, is that their plan is to hold on to him and develop him into a tackle. I think that's just kind of dumb to just think we're going to hold on to Juergens and we're going to move him to center. Because look at Lane Johnson. He was brought in here to be the left tackle after Jason Peters left, and he's just been a career right tackle, and he's been a damn good one. So if you have the opening and you have an injury leaving this spot open, and you really thought that coming into training camp, Steen might have been the next guy up, the only reason I could see that you're really hesitant on playing him is because you saw that he just needed a redshirt year. And who knows, maybe Sua doesn't do that well this week and next week, and then they decide to go with Steen. But I don't think it's really something to be too concerned about for the time being.
Yeah, I mean it's more just, and maybe that's just greedy fan talk. Like you want to see your third round guys be third round guy talent, especially when we're talking about an offensive lineman. Like different drafting a third round D tackle. It's like, yeah, that guy's not going to be good for a couple years, but a third round offensive lineman, you're probably going to be like, I really hope that this guy comes in and flexes nuts pretty quick. But yeah, again, the not playing rookies, and I trust Jeff Stoutland more than I trust myself. Like if I'm stone cold sober and Jeff Stoutland says, "Hey, you need a ride home," I'll be like, "Yeah, man, I'm probably too drunk." Like I trust Jeff Stoutland to make the right decision. I think that they're more than prepared to be able to maybe not throw everything that handle everything that Aaron Donald throws at them, but be able to handle a good chunk of it. Have how many of these offensive linemen have played Aaron Donald? Do we know? I know it's Kelsey.
Kelsey definitely has. Lane Johnson definitely has.
Has Dickerson?
No,
I don't think so.
Because the last time the Eagles played the Rams was 2020, when they had the Carson Wentz was playing, and they had the speakers, because it was COVID year, and they had the speakers playing the booze in an empty stadium.
Yep.
So that would have been before Dickerson. That would have been my Lotto was there though. But I mean, it's not like the tackles are really going to match up against Donald all that much.
No. Okay. Obviously it's frightening. You mean it's best person on that roster by, I'd say by a long shot. I'm out on Cooper Kupp. But yeah,
is he playing?
He might be.
He might be.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that's just something. That's just something to keep an eye on. Having a change on a offensive line is never a good thing, especially when Aaron Donald is the guy that you're coming up against. We got a few minutes left. I want to take a minute to bitch about officiating.
I think you should.
I don't have the pictures up here or anything, but the offsides on the brotherly shove, that's bullshit. That's what that is. This guy, and I understand the thought, like, okay, the ref's on the side. He doesn't have the bird's eye view to see whatever his name's was, hand touching the goddamn football. but you should probably know that only one guy is supposed to touch it. And if there's two guys touching it, then the other guy who's not Jason Kelsey is the one who's doing a penalty. Like, we know that. No. But make sure you get Landon Dickerson for having his helmet line up in a legal area. Very frustrating on that one. The defensive pass interference on James Bradbury, was it a hold? Get out of here with that. What are we doing? What is that? That is not a hold. The man ran by him. The man touched him. The man touched James Bradbury. It's like me putting my hand next to my brother's head. We're in the backseat of a car and I say, I'm not touching you. And then he puts his head into my hand. It's like, no, you touched me, dickhead. Like, no, that was not a DPI. That was very frustrating. Another, I talked about this in the open, the intentional grounding and overtime. The hell is that? Nobody's ever called that. No one's ever called that.
Miscommunications were a penalty.
What? Oh my God, so stupid. And then Slay had a DPI on him. How many penalties were there total? I was infuriated. What?
I think the thing that was even worse was watching the Jets-Chiefs game later and seeing the same things happen, where it's like either something that the Eagles did, the Chiefs would do the same thing. Like, there was a play where Mahomes almost got sacked and he just threw it in the ground. Like, it was intentional grounding by every way you look at it, and they were just like, oh no, Pacheco was in the area, he got hit.
Yeah,
where was that when Jalen Hurts got hit and it was a miscommunication and he actually got the ball past the line of scrimmage?
Oh my God.
You know?
Yeah, it's 11 penalties for 80 yards. The fact that this team can come back from that's what my biggest takeaway is in this game. There was some weird stuff that happened in this game. The Terrell Edmonds should have been an interception. The fumble into the end zone, that's a dumb one. There's another one where Brian Robinson dropped a pitch and it bounced straight back up to him like it was a yo-yo. That's probably a thing that's more relatable than yo-yoing. Yeah, basketball. Then there was all of the penalties. The fact that they were able to come back from that 80 yards on 11 penalties should destroy a team. But they can't from it.
This is the thing about NFL officiating, whether it's the Eagles, whether it's the Jets, whether it's really like any other team. It's very strange, and it's not even like a conspiracy thing. It just kind of feels like certain teams get calls a certain way, and then other teams just simply don't get those same calls. And the weird part is it's not even like it happens over the course of a full game. It's a game's called one way the entire time. Players play away the entire time. Then all of a sudden, it always seems to be late in the game whenever it happens to these certain teams, then the call happens. And the reaction isn't necessarily because it's not a penalty, because sometimes it is by the rule book a penalty. But if an official is letting something slide the entire game, if you're letting guys play physical the entire game, don't call the penalty then. Don't call the penalty in that fourth quarter, in that important drive in the third quarter that can swing a game one way or the other. Because then it starts affecting the integrity of the game. No team wins a game or loses a game from one bad call or two bad calls, whether it's the Eagles game Sunday, whether it's the Jets on Sunday night. But when you have those calls occur in certain situations, you are effectively having an impact on what happens. You could argue without some of the penalties, the Eagles maybe win by 2 scores or win by a touchdown, right? You could argue that, if Kansas City doesn't get the certain call, that the Jets end up tying that game, taken to overtime, or end up winning the game. You don't know. We've seen it. The Rams with that penalty on the Saints, like, throughout NFL history, throughout all these different games, we've seen games being called a certain way, and then that penalty coming in and completely changing the scope of the game when it hasn't been called that way, or a missed call for something that is so blatantly obvious that it completely impacts everything. And ironically, once again, using that word, the Chiefs seem to get a lot of these calls, or the Patriots, when they're at the top, seem to get a lot of these calls. And Should it necessarily be that way? No, but it just seems like usually the top teams in the NFL, or the top team, quote unquote, in the NFL gets the benefit of the doubt with a lot of calls, especially in these tough situations.
It's almost like a phantom and the only defensive penalty coming in the Super Bowl with 1 minute left in the game. Almost like that. Oh, of course, what I'm referring to is when that happened to the Bengals in Super Bowl 56. That happened also again in Super Bowl 57. So yeah, there is incredible inconsistency. It's the dumbest thing. Yeah, that kind of goes overblown. The phantom hold on James Bradbury in the Super Bowl that happened literally 1 year prior to that with the Bengals and Rams. It's the dumbest thing, and my heart pressure's up. My watch gave me a notification of that. I'm healthy. I'm healthy, is what I'll tell myself.
Yeah, but how many refs? And this is something that has always frustrated me for as long as I've watched football, because not every ref does this, and not every penalty is like this. And it was really apparent, and Brandon talked about it before the show, was that how many refs sit there and watch how the play goes, and instead of throwing the flag when they see the foul, they wait to see how the play ends, and then maybe they'll even talk to another ref and then throw the flag. That's not the job. You're the ref. You should know the rules already. You should be sitting in a film room like a player, and you should see when the hand grabs on the jersey like this, it's a hold, or when it's not, or how to not see a hold is just as important how to see as it is to see a hold. But they just wait until the end of the play. They wait to see how the play ends, and they'll say, "Oh, wait, Mahomes threw an incompletion. He threw an interception. It's the ball's going the other way now. Oh, we have to throw the flag now because
I want
of
Taylor
the way
Swift
the play ended, not because of the foul that happened in the moment." And I don't know if it's because they're trying to get away with it, or if they take a second to think about it, but they genuinely make themselves look terrible with waiting to see how the play ends and then throwing the flag.
It's bad. Like that type of thing where
it's bullshittery is what it is.
It doesn't matter what team it is, right? If you're waiting until after the play to throw a flag, that's just like, at that point, don't even call the penalty. Because now,
Right.
Even if it isn't that situation, throwing a flag after an interception occurs, like what are we doing? Like it makes the product honestly look rigged. And it's not rigged because so many different things would have to happen throughout the course of a game for it to be rigged. A team would literally have, to get every single call for it to be rigged, or to get every ticky-tack penalty for it to be rigged. But when stuff like that happens, when you're throwing flags after the outcome of a play, man, that's just a bad luck.
And this is kind of on the same subject. So this year, the XFL did a thing where coaches could challenge a lack of a penalty, and it was the funniest thing because the XFL was 10 weeks long. For the first 8 weeks, coaches were like, "Oh no, that was a pass interference," but then it would never it would never happen. Like they would always, the call on the field stands, it was not a pass interference. But then near the end of the season, the coaches all started getting smart enough where if a team threw a 70-yard touchdown or something like that, just this huge explosive play, the coach would throw their challenge flag out and challenge for a illegal use of hands to the face or something like that. And it would always come back because it happens on every goddamn play. It was a very funny thing to see people's brains actually grow. I was like, oh yeah, I guess there is one on every single play. That's fun. That's a good officiating bitch fest right there. I think that was very dumb. What 11 penalties. 11 penalties. There was 18 flags thrown in that game. There was probably more actually, because that's only the accepted penalties.
Can we have a bitch fest about the announcers next week?
Yeah,
I think the announcers in football are just as bad as the officials. If you watch the game, it's like they don't even talk about football anymore. It's ridiculous. They'll say, "Oh, like Taylor Swift's in the stands," or what pop culture reference can we make off of this touchdown? Instead of being like the good old days where John Madden would be like, "Oh, this is how an offense works. This is how a defense works." And
now, what do you want more? Do you want
further.
Tony Romo to predict every single play, or do you want?
That's the last thing I want, actually.
Okay, good.
It's got to be a
I
balance.
want less of Tony Romo.
It's got to be a balance, and there's some really good broadcasters, but there's also some not so great ones. Like
not the ones that have the biggest games.
At least we haven't had Aqib Talib this year yet. That man is a dipshit through and through.
Hey, it's called CT. He's been through a lot.
It's like having what's his name? Team Money Team. Floyd Mayweather call a game. Like, what are you talking about? It's brutal. All right. Do you guys have anything else?
I'm good.
Sweet.
I think we covered it.
I think we did too. What's like looking back? One last thing. At the end of the Friday show, Travis, you weren't here, but we did the predictions on what we thought the storyline was going to be this week. What was yours, Brandon? Do you remember?
I said Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter would be talked about as the dynamic duo that they've continued to show that they are.
I don't want to rule that out yet. I don't want to rule that out because when the All-22 comes out, I believe you're going to, like I said before, you're going to see a lot of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis opening up those lanes for the sacks for the Nicholas Morrow. I think that not every one of those sacks was just his pure talent or Antonio Gibson running by him. On the other side of that, though, talking about sacks, not all sacks are created equal. And Josh Sweat falling onto Sam Howell and then doing his celebration is something that I absolutely love. Flex your nuts whenever you do something that you didn't deserve, Josh Sweat. That was great. But yeah, I don't want to rule out the Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. I can't remember what mine was. I think I said that the offense was going to wake up. Maybe I got there. I don't know. All right, but it's been over an hour. Thank you guys, everybody that is still watching. If you watched it all, thank you guys very much for joining us on The Nest, this Inside the Iggles live show. Your Philadelphia Eagles are 4-0 for the second consecutive season. Doesn't matter what we said here. It doesn't matter if we ragged on anything. The important thing is that it was 34-1. The Philadelphia Eagles won. Jake Elliott is everyone's king, best kicker in the NFL, better than Justin Tucker. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to go out on that. I don't want to have to defend myself. So before anybody can say anything to challenge that, thank you guys very much for joining us, and we will catch you on Friday.
When
Go
Jake
Birds.
drinks his piss.